Hugely important. It's vital. It's such a big part of who we are as high sensory people, this trusting, this inner knowing. And it is something that I completely lost for such a long time. And that makes it even more precious now. Every new little bit of it that I discover, I feel so grateful for, and it makes me feel more alive. And actually, like I'm almost getting younger rather than older, which is a really strange sensation to be getting, in what is effectively, my middle age.
Illuminance specializes in developing sensory processing sensitivity, a natural high sensory intelligence present in 30% of the population, co-creating with the power of humanity to consciously evolve towards balance. This session features trained high sensory coaches, facilitators and consultants who coach other high sensory people and partner with organizations globally. To contact them directly or to find out about our programs, please see the details in the description.
It's wonderful to be here with all of you. Hello, Jane. Hello, Karen. Hello, Trude. Hello, Kemal. Hello, Melina. Today is Monday, September 4th, 2023, and I am happy and honored to facilitate this exchange between all of us. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself, and after that, I'd love for you to do the same. My name is Shreen Maluf. I like to call myself your autonomy catalyst. I provide sensitive high achievers with my fast-track exclusive methodology to help them get unstuck, align their mind and heart to the language of their soul, and grow their wings. I offer these services in English, French, and Arabic. You can find me through my website, shireenmaluf.com, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So please go ahead and introduce yourself, and please share one meaningful thing you'd like to bring into today's conversation. Who would like to go first?
Hi, yes, thank you, Shaheen. So I'm Karen Hunt, and I support and champion high sensory mothers and change makers, because I believe that when we look after ourselves first, that's when the real magic unfolds in the world. And I'm looking forward to talking to you today about the, well, you said the strengths and struggles of high sensory people in navigating their gut feelings. It's an important topic, because as high sensory people, we do trust our gut and we do trust our intuition. However, we also have things that can get in the way with that. So I'm sure that'll all unfold in time in our conversation.
Thank you, Shireen. So my name is Kemal Shaheen. I'm a high sensory facilitator with a background in international development in the not-for-profit sector. I work with charities and charity leaders to help them align with their deeper purpose. And you can find me on LinkedIn. The thing that I would like to bring into the session is, I think it's a fascinating topic. And I have a deep belief that imagination and the imaginal realm has a very close connection with how we experience instinct and gut and intuition. And I would love to explore some of that with you today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kemal. Melina.
Thanks, Shireen. My name's Melina Zipparo. I support women, parents and caregivers manage the symptoms of burnout across all areas, including work life, personal life and family life. Through my guidance and experience, I lead my clients towards reconnection to clarity within and balanced, purposeful living. I too am so honoured to be part of the conversation today, because one thing that I am really fascinated by is the blurring of lines, I guess, between intuition as we traditionally know it as a gut feeling and a guidance, if you like, as opposed to feelings that we get from past conditioning that may present itself as intuition, but in essence isn't really intuition as such. It's just based on past fears or past experiences. So thank you so much, Shreen, for facilitating the topic today.
Thank you, Melina. Thank you. Trude?
Thanks, Shreen. Yeah. So yeah, my name is Trude Sletteland. I am located in Bergen, Norway. And yeah, so what I am a high sensory coach. That's my profession. And what I do is I coach highly sensitive people from my own high sensitivity. And I've only just realized that being a high sensory coach has, for me, always just been following my gut feeling. And I hope that was a little bit more helpful. But as I said, I've always found it extremely difficult to explain, simply because it just comes from my gut and not from my head. And so I've been trying to explain this for years and years and years. And I think you can find some explanations on Facebook and LinkedIn, where I am called Trude Sletteland, high sensory coach, or the other way around.
Sure. Jane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Shaheen. It's so good to be here. I'm Jane Elizabeth Aston. I'm from the UK and I'm a high sensory leader and spiritual connection coach. I work exclusively with high sensory people, or HSPs, who want to explore their spiritual nature and deepen their connection and alignment. I specialise in working with high sensory people who, like me, are in 12-step recovery from addiction, but you don't have to be in 12-step recovery to work with me. You can find me at janeelizabethaston.com and also on the High Sensory People podcast that I co-host every week with Alicia May. And in terms of what I want to bring today to this discussion, it's a wonderful topic and one that I've been traveling into really from when I was a child and I lost connection with my gut instincts, to now, when really I try to show up in my life with my authentic, unedited self as much as possible. So that's what I'm going to try to bring to the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. So, as you all mentioned and briefed already in the conversation, today's topic is breaking free from the cycle of overthinking by using our second brain. You may have heard the idea that the gut is the second brain. In fact, neuroscientists say there are approximately 100 to 600 million neurons in the gut, about as many as you'd find in the brain. The gut feeling manifests as a deeper knowing and intuition, like you've mentioned, and an ability to immediately understand something without conscious reasoning. Studies show that combining gut feelings with analytical thinking helps you make better, faster, and more accurate decisions, giving you more confidence in your choices than relying on intellect alone. How many times in your life have you regretted not listening to your gut feelings? I know I have. Leaders who identify as high sensory or highly sensitive people often have stronger gut feelings than most, but have also been discouraged from using this important sensory data. Many high sensory individuals, including sensitive high achievers, were taught to devaluate their connection to their gut feelings. This disconnection from an early age often leads to getting stuck in overthinking and overanalyzing. This may manifest as having brilliant careers and achieving high levels of success, but on the inside, experiencing feelings of being scattered, being stuck, and having low self-esteem. In many cases, relationships with others become conflict-ridden and infused with power dynamics, with deep heartbreaks. Fortunately, and this is the good news, the communication between the gut feeling and the intellect can be strengthened with intentional practice. So this brings us back into the core of our topic, exploring the strength and struggles of high sensory people in navigating their gut feeling. So let's get started. The first thing I would like to bring in is, does your gut feeling mean to you as a high sensory person? Coach, the leader. Jane, would you like to go?
Wow. I would. What does it mean? What does my gut feeling mean to me as a high sensory person? Well, it's a gut feeling, and it's a heart feeling, and it's an in-body feeling as opposed to an in-head feeling, which I have learned is really, really important for me to pay attention to as a high sensory person. It's possibly the greatest, richest, most trustworthy resource that I have. And it's very different from the resource that I used to trust, which was my head or what other people told me. And I think, I mentioned in my introduction that I absolutely didn't used to trust my gut. I mean, I probably did when I was a very, very, very young child. But really, by the time I've got many conscious memories, I was not all the time, but largely not in that place of trusting myself. And I was very much being conditioned to be appropriate, so behave appropriately, say appropriate things, and there's a place for that. There is. I also said in my introduction that I want to bring my authentic, unedited self. I mean, if I always brought my unedited self everywhere, and if we all did that, there'd be anarchy. So there is a place for some editing, I think. But what I did was I edited myself so completely that there was very little of my authentic self left, because I was not trusting what my gut, what my heart, what my soul, what my spirit was telling me, because I'd learned to not listen to that, because when I listened to it, it generally was disapproved of. So my journey to becoming a high sensory coach, doing the work that I do and living in a way which is really authentic to my high sensory self, well, it has been a huge journey spanning, well, my whole life, but certainly knowingly the last 32, 33 years. So that's a long time of actively trying to remember who I am, trying to reconnect with what I really think and feel and believe. And that can be really scary sometimes. But the fact is that the work I do is only made possible by listening to what my gut, what my intuition, and what my body is telling me. In these sessions, previously, when somebody said something, often when you all say things that are really meaningful to me, I feel it in my body. I feel it. It's a physical sensation of, if I drew it, there would be little sparkly bits all over my skin, and inside they would be, like little stars dancing. I feel it, and I have to pay attention to that, because it tells me that things are important and special and magical. And that gives me a clue to the things that it's important for the person in front of me or the people in front of me to talk about and explore. Gives me a clue what to say next, where to go next, when to say something, when to be quiet and allow others to speak. It's hugely important. It's vital. It's such a big part of who we are as high sensory people, this trusting, this inner knowing. And it is something that I completely lost for such a long time. And that makes it even more precious now. Every new little bit of it that I discover, I feel so grateful for, and it makes me feel more alive. And actually, like I'm almost getting younger rather than older, which is a really strange sensation to be getting, in what is effectively, my middle age. So it's an absolute delight to be talking about this. Thank you so much for introducing this topic, Shreen.
Thank you, Jane. I love what you said, and I so much relate with the authentic, unedited self. It's so powerful, this feeling of coming home to myself, and curiously, by coming home to myself, I do also connect with the stars that you mentioned, and this sensation, the physical sensation, like it's physical, it's stars, is coming home, it's the unedited, it's the authenticity. I totally relate to every word that you said, Jane. Thank you. And talking about the stars, it brings me to mind the imagination that Kemal had mentioned earlier. And I'm wondering, Kemal, how would you like to bring in your experience into that?
No, I really resonated with what you were saying there, Jane. And the sparkly stars, certainly, that you feel the effervescence in your body. What I really heard when you were talking was around being able to tune into a quiet voice, and a quiet voice that has somehow in our life's journeys we've either detuned ourselves from that quiet voice, or conditioning or institutional education has provided us with a sort of a way of thinking, a way of perceiving the world, which is almost like a noise in one's head, and or a sort of a static electricity. And I think what we as high sensory people, through the act of deep listening and intuition, is preparing ourselves to listen attentively to that still quiet voice at the center of our being. And picking up on what you were saying, Shreen, about imagination, and we talk about the intelligence of the gut, or the wisdom of the gut, and and instinctual. But for me, this isn't the sort of instinctual, lizard-like reptilian response, fight or flight, flood of cortisol. It's not that sort of intuition that we're talking about. It's about a quietening down of ourselves, so that we can perceive those sort of subtle energies that, for me, it's around little images pop up. Henri Corbin talked about the imaginal realm. And if you can tune into that quiet voice, little images and metaphors and symbols and pictures and words will sort of do a dance, and you start to make sense of what's dancing before you, I think. And so it's not that sort of knee-jerk, like quick response. It's more just listening to that silent voice, and a picture slowly starts to emerge because you're silently attending to what's really going on energetically in any particular situation. So for me, it's using the power of the imagination coupled with the intuition as a dance.
Oh, I love that. I love this notion of dance, and yet at the same time, there's stillness. You talk about stillness, quiet voice. So there's a movement, but then there's also this stillness, the imaginal, the realm. So it's like tapping into the infinite possibilities, where there is in images, there is in sound, there is in silence, there is in dance and movement. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Kemal, for sharing that. Trude, how would you resonate with this dance and this.
I mean, that sounded just beautiful. And it's so different from from the way I sort of perceive the gut, but it sounded so wonderful. And I wonder why. Mine was so different, because I can really sort of relate to that dance, the stars, to that beauty of the quiet. But I don't think there's much about me that's very quiet. And my gut is like really loud, and it's always telling me if something is wrong, because I think if, you know, my imagination, if I can think of my imagination as the stars, it is where things tingle and sparkle, and things just pop up. That is, you know, floating, flying, being in a sort of like the real world, the right world, where things are okay, right? And my gut feeling normally says, well, that's wrong if something comes in the way of that, because the real world is beautiful and full of love and light and hopefulness, and yeah, the real world is probably the wrong word, but you know, so to me, my gut is just simply nudging me in the right or wrong, no, right direction, and saying, no, don't go that way. So it's like telling me something. Does that make sense? And I sort of like, I really related to the what you said, Jane, about age, but how you feel younger, because that is, you know, the curiosity, inquisitiveness of children being sort of you know, generally searching for anything, being alive. It's a very sort of, and we learn how to stop being alive, stop searching, stop being curious, and if you get back to that, you feel younger. And so I think feeling young is about being alive and about being in those stars and dance. And then your brain is like telling you, don't do that. So to me, the brain is very often telling you the wrong things. Don't listen to your brain, because it keeps stopping you from everything, because it keeps listening to other people. And so I've never trusted pure brain, never. Anybody's, not my own, not anybody else's, because I know the gut is what is really saying what's right. And so my gut feeling, my instinct is the first thing that talks to me. And then I can sort of get my brain into it and try to figure out what it's trying to say. But if somebody is speaking just from their heads, with words, with language, I don't believe them, I don't trust them. It needs to be a combination.
That's amazing, Trude, because as you were talking, I was, you know, with all the words that I've heard so far, like the stars, the stillness, the quietness, and then the how your gut tells you this is the right direction, and the getting younger. The image that I had is like every time we connect to the gut, like we allow one neuron of these 100 neurons to just come alive, and then we have this universe inside of us, which is actually coming alive with all its different aspects of sound, of images, of movement, of dance, and this is actually why we do actually, is we're actually allowing a whole set of neurons getting more alive and more present. I mean, this is the metaphor that I just saw. This is not a scientific explanation at all. So, Karen, I'd like to invite you to come in and tell us more about your experience about that.
Thank you. Wow. Each time someone spoke, I thought, oh yeah, I really resonate with that and I want to add something. And that's happened each time. So I've got a lot of different different touch points that I could go with. So I feel like this is a like all the other topics, we could talk about this for hours, couldn't we? There's so much to it. So when you first brought this topic up, my first thought was the gut versus the head. That was sort of my experience straight away, was with my head listening to voices of society, family, teachers, everybody, and not trusting myself, because I think as a child we have that conditioning, really, that stops us from listening to our bodies. Like, you know, I know when I was born, it was all the trend to have babies on a strict regimen of feeding. So straight away, as a baby, your gut says, I'm hungry, so you cry, but mother looks at the clock, it's not time to eat. So straight away we're conditioned not to trust ourselves, because we can't trust ourselves to get fed at the time we need to get fed. Going to the toilet as well, you know, there's a whole area on toilet training, isn't there? So there's so many things from such a young age that can stop us from trusting ourselves. And it's a lifelong journey to get back to that, or it can be for some of us. And so for me, that's what it's been. It's been this struggle. And I think if you're sort of slightly intellectual, or you're quite good at school, at academic subjects, things like that, then of course you're encouraged to pursue that, aren't you? And so, you know, you have to listen to your head, you have to learn, you have to study, which means, again, you're disconnecting from the truth of your body and what your body's telling you. And yeah, so then I can touch upon a little bit what Trude was saying about her coaching, because before I qualified as a coach, I was coaching, and I was doing it through my intuition. And the way I sort of separate the intuition and the gut feeling is that the intuition feels like a divine guidance. It's information that comes down and through when I'm clear and empty as much as I can be. So, and I can get empty and clear when I'm in nature, when I'm doing some mindfulness, meditation, yoga, using essential oils, whatever it is, there's something that creates some space, which again kind of goes back to what we were saying, Jane, I think, about the youthfulness. Because when I was a child, I was out in nature and I was just connected, and it's getting back to that connection. So then with the gut feeling, though, that feels different to me, because that feels something more within my body. So it's a different feeling. I mean, I also relate to the sparkles, and I get that every time we have our conversations, the welling up, the tears are coming, the physical sensation. So that feels more gut. And then just the connection with somebody, and the knowing if I'm coaching someone or something, and I'll just get the insights, I'll get the metaphors, I'll get the right thing come through. So yeah, there's so much to say, but it's amazing. I'm so happy to have this to have this ability now. Yeah, it's such a gift.
Oh, thank you, Karen, for sharing your perspective from being a mother and all this experience behind that. I can sense how important the cycles of the body are so different from this conditioning. You mentioned the mother looking at the clock, but there's also this whole schooling conditioning about what is permissible, what is not permissible, what time this should be, what time should that be. And that brings me back to Melina, what you mentioned at the beginning of this session about this conditioning and intuition. How would you recognize its conditioning? How would you recognize it's your intuition? Would you like to share your experience on that, Melina?
Thanks, Shreen. Yeah, I think as I deepen my own self-discovery and you know, coming through you know, many realizations of you know, what I thought was my intuition, I feel was fear-based. It was based on fear of fear of getting things wrong, for instance, fear of fear of pretty much fear of not doing the right thing. And I based right and wrong based on past experiences, and we all do, I guess. But I think for me, really what I've embraced is learning that it's really all about a quiet guidance. It doesn't come from a place of fear. And more importantly, it's without the fear of consequences. What I'm learning as I go deeper into my own journey is that very strong feeling that I get that to go one way or another, for instance, or, you know, to make a decision, or even, you know, having a feeling about a situation or something that is unfolding in front of me. If I get that guidance, I'm not worried about it being right or wrong, or what the consequences will be. And I very 100% was previous to me discovering discovering my own authenticity. And I think as we surrender more to life and as it unfolds, and trusting life to be what it is, I think that's creating more space for me to trust myself. And that's been, you know, a wonderful thing to come, you know, face to face with, because it kind of opens up just it's a whole new realm of possibilities, and yeah, and so liberating to be able to operate in life like that, like from a place of I guess it's fearlessness. And I think fear is a major reason why we're blocked from, you know, tuning into our own intuition. Yes, but as Karen said, there's so much, you know, to delve into, but yeah, I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you. It's wonderful to see what tapping into the gut feeling can open up. And at the same time, I heard like words like fear, the brain, what the brain says is wrong, the conditioning. So I'd like to ask you, in your journey of feeling, there are actually two questions in that one question. Who is the you who unfolded? And what tips or what actions did you do to come back to that reconnection within yourself?
Love to go on that one, because
Sure.
that's exactly
ahead,
what
Jane.
was in my kind of heart and head as you were all talking. You know, like, it is about the journey, really. Where was I? What tipped me into needing to work and change? And how did I do that? That's basically what I'm all about. And what Karen was talking about really from when we, some of us, are very young, we are regimented. Our bodies are told to behave in a certain way. And it's so much conditioning resulted in so much disconnection from my body with me, which meant that I spent my first 20 to 30 years developing, you know, problems around eating, around elimination, physical health problems, so many, mental health problems, also, you know, long-standing addictions, compulsions. I mean, you name it, I've tried it as a coping strategy. And because my body just couldn't find any place to be peaceful at all, I had not been taught any sort of self-regulation or soothing. It was terribly painful. So these have all been huge struggles. And because I was, you know, intellectually quite bright at school, I found that easy, and it was praised. It was one of the things that was really praised and encouraged. There were a lot of things that weren't, but that was, you know, like, oh yeah, Jane's good at passing exams. So that's basically what I did to make up for all the other things that I didn't seem to be very good at. So, you know, I connected with my intellect. I trusted my mind. I completely lost any connection to my body, really. I still did physical stuff. Thank God I did. That was probably my saving grace, you know, gymnastics, swimming, things like that. The gym later, you know, that was good. But there was no connection between anything. It was like my body does this, my mind, I mean, yeah. And so I lost connection with my body and my heart. And what changed was I got into the most appalling physical states and mental states and addiction states. Now, if I wasn't high sensory, I probably would still be on those paths. But because I am, it became too painful at a soul level, at a spirit level, at a heart level. And because I'm here on this earth to do some work around helping other people who've been on that journey, there was something always working me from behind, even at my darkest moments. There was something that made me seek the solution rather than the destruction in the end. There was a tipping point, of course there was. And it was just that point where, like, I can't do this anymore. It's unbearable. I need to do something else, even though it's deeply scary to give up this substance, this behavior, this compulsion, this way of being. Deeply scary, and involves a lot of change and a lot of sacrifice and a lot of work. And it is scary, but ultimately, once I started tapping into this idea of faith, other people have done this before me, finding other people who'd negotiated some of these struggles in the same way, and having faith that if they did it, I could do it too. And that's what I did. And then along the way, one of the things, you know, that's also been talked about is this dance that goes on around us. And that made me think of the power of music. And music has always been a way for me to connect with my body. Music, you know, I used to play various musical instruments. I still do a little bit, not so much. And music has always really helped me. I think the power of music to help me connect. And that also made me think of the still, small, calm, quiet voice within, the voice of knowing within. And there's a piece of music, you probably all know it because it's super famous. It's an Elgar piece, one of the Enigma variations, Nimrod, the really beautiful, slow one. There's a little bit in that, which I believe he did write to illustrate. There's a bit in the Bible, I think, where they talk about somebody goes into a cave on a mountain and they hear the still small voice of God. And that bit of music at the end, when it's really crescendo, and then it's sort of like it goes to really quiet. And that is the still, small, calm voice of God. And when I get that from music, even in my darkest days, I could still, that gave me a little glimmer of light. So music was really helpful. it's always helped me to tap into, as you said, Shreen, the infinite possibilities. It doesn't have to be classical. It can be something with a really good beat, and I can dance and I can get into that sort of tribal self. That helps me to connect to my gut as well. Yeah, and when I do that, when I'm able to do that through music or nature or whatever, or being in a group like this, I just feel it helps me and us to that still small voice. It's not me talking, it's the wisdom of the ages talking within me, telling me really good stuff I want to share with other people. So, yeah.
Wisdom of the ages. Oh my. Wow. It's that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Jane, for sharing your story and this tipping point that is so powerful. And this trail that you're talking about, like faith, finding other people, find things that will help you connect, that voice, and this tribal self. I mean, these are like, there were steps for you to find your way back to this reconnection. It's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jane. Who would like to, who resonates to continue?
I do resonate with what Jane's saying, not to the same degree, but certainly there's a similar sort of path there. And for me, I would say it's just been, it's not been a particular point. It's been kind of a long, slow process over many years. And I think one of those was when I moved down to Devon. I was living in Cambridge, and so it's quite interesting, isn't it? Cambridge is quite a head place. And then Devon is a very different sort of place. It's very, especially where I wanted to move to, Totnes, it's a very heart place. And each time we would come down to navigate and to have a look around, and then go back to Cambridge, each time we would do that, I felt a physical sensation of leaving a piece of my heart behind. And I could feel it's like threads of my heart were left, and I was coming back to Cambridge. And then the next time we came down to sort of look again, more was left behind. And each time it got more and more painful, because I felt like more of myself was being pulled to stay here, and it was difficult to go back. And I physically felt that. And certainly when we did move down here, that's when a lot of healing began for me. There are so many healers here and amazing therapists, and I just dove into all these different modalities of therapy, and that really helped connect me to my body and to myself, because there was just an environment that I was putting myself into. The people around me were all about health and wellness and healing. The shops, sold lots of great products, organic and natural, and we lived in this incredible environment that nature provides for us here. I was just putting myself in a place where this healing really was able to thrive. And I think that was where it really happened for me, where I was able to really listen to my body more, because I've got experiences of when I had gut feelings about something and my head was going, No, you said you were going to do that, so we'll do that. Just ignore that. And then one problem, disaster after another happened. But I was stubborn because I wanted to listen to what my head had to say. But I don't do that anymore. I've learned not to do that. I listen to my head. I will allow it to do its thing, to think about something. But otherwise, I'll step away and just use it as a tool, like I'll use my computer or my phone, and I will choose when to use it. And I think that really helps if I see my head in the same way as I see, a technological tool. We shouldn't be using that all the time without thinking. We need to use it consciously for a purpose. Otherwise, it's just way too much, but that's a different topic for another time, I suspect.
Oh, Karen, what you're bringing in is it's opening up another perspective of like this anchoring in the place, in the land, this connection with the land. Like when you change the place, it's actually allowed you to do that healing and to find this reconnection with your body. It actually also goes back to what Jane was saying, the tribal self, that there's this connection with the nature, with the land, with the elements of nature, which are part of creation, and they bring us into reconnection with our body, hence our gut feeling, because our gut feeling is our body and it is in our body and it is connected with the element. Because in the gut, there's water, there's earth, there's air, there's fire. So we connect, when we connect with the gut feeling, we're in harmony, we're in resonance with nature and with this tribal self and with the land. And thank you so much for sharing these tips, how you were able to step away from your mind and allow this connection to your body and for you to know what is good for you at that moment in time. Thank you so much, Karen. Wow. Who resonates to go?
That really resonated with me, Karen. And something that's really sort of coming through quite strongly for me at the moment is finding our way back home. And this idea that the mind is a faithful servant, but it's not always a helpful ruler. And you were talking about Cambridge, Karen, and I spent 3 years at Cambridge, and for me, it was quite a sort of disconnecting experience, being stuck in the mind and being conditioned with this idea that what is going to be governing how I think and understand and interpret and choose to act in the world comes from this place. And it didn't make sense to me, but I was being trained to look at the world in a way that felt very remote from how I really wanted to look at the world. Objectively standing apart from it, not feeling connected with it. And it wasn't until I did my doctoral research around education and educational exclusion, and my supervisor said to me, "Why do you care about this topic, Kemal?" And it was almost like something just opened up in me. This isn't about what have I read about this topic? What do I know about this topic? What can I say intelligently about this topic? It was about going back to my very first experiences in kindergarten and thinking about, children that had been pushed to the margins, who had, been identified as problem children, and thinking about and knowing them for 20 years and thinking about how their lives mapped out during that time, and having been labeled 20 years ago as problem children, and then You know, so a real tragedy happening to this one boy who ended up being excluded from school. I think he was super intelligent boy. You know, I really liked him, but he was always being pushed to the margins at school, and he was excluded. And I discovered, I learned that he was, you know, he was killed in a motorbike accident after being released from prison, having served 7 years, having committed an armed robbery. And so this whole sort of going back to those earliest experiences in kindergarten, seeing how children labeled, it impacts their whole lives, you know, and similar sort of acts of labeling of, oh, this girl is really intelligent, she's going to be super successful. She went on to go to Cambridge and become a world expert in a particular area. And just that, it all, you know, that being dictated by the head felt so wrong. So it was that being encouraged to connect to these issues through the heart then opens up, I think, that ability to sort of feel into, intuit, listen to what's going on in terms of that still silent voice. That for me feels where the real connection comes, not at the head. The head is a faithful servant, but it shouldn't dictate how we see the world. And so for me, that was the reconnection with starting to move away from the head and starting to just be quiet and listen and hear what was wanting to come through.
Labels, you know, when you put labels, we separate. It's like this child that you talked about. Whereas, yes, knowing, when we know something or we experience something, it's a different realm. What do we need to get into that experience, to experience the other and not label the other and separate ourselves from the other? So that connection to ourselves is also a connection to the other. And as the Native Americans say, we are all related because we're all have the same body. It's exactly it has the same elements. It functions in the same way. So even if we label, even if the mind dictates, actually the experience is the same. Thank you, Kemal. I feel it right in the heart. Thank you. Would you like to continue?
I think I would like to comment on that. I think that really, really hit home. I mean, that brought tears to my eyes and made me feel, you know, almost sick. And this, to me, is my gut feeling. You know, I feel that there's something terribly wrong in the systems that are, you know, they're doing something to us that's not right. And, you know, these reactions, that's the gut feeling that I always feel I need to react on. So that's when I get this feeling, when I, you know, really feel my eyes watering, when I feel shaky, all of that, I need to do something. So to me, this is, you know, when I hear someone speak, you know, like, you know, Sir Ken Robbins, what's his name? Seriously, I know his name really well, but anyway, I've been crying to his talks for years. You know, and when I hear someone saying something really profound, it really gets to me. It gets to me in my entire body. And that to me is a high sensory intelligence speaking, the high sensory intuition. It's really, really strong. And it's there, for me, it's there because it's telling me to do something. So that would urge me to write a blog, try to send it to some newspaper, talk to people, start a new center, whatever. I need to do something about it because it's so important. So now you're right at the core of, you know, what I've been what's been me my entire life, because you know, when I was little, I was quite good in school. I went to school in England when I was 5, and that was 2 years earlier than we would have in Norway. And the teachers said they'd never seen pupils learning that fast. So it's like, you know, I've always been told I'm brainy, I'm good at school, but I didn't belong, never. And this is the exact reason. And every time I hear things like what you've been saying, Kemal, I feel that this is it. That's my biggest issue in my life, is that school is ruining our potential of listening to our, you know, our gut feeling, our intuition, ourselves, and they're teaching us to use words that, you know, can be interpreted in many ways, and use only the brain, and competing, because that's what the brain does. It helps us compete, and so one's better than the other. Where if, you know, so this really is my topic, you know, of choice. So if we use our emotions, our intuition, we will get closer to, you know, love, happiness, togetherness, and that is the shared family, what you just mentioned, Shreen. We are all related, and if we can feel that, we don't have to compete with our heads. Yeah, so to me, I mean, this is just, it's just the most important thing in the world. I wish we could just make a new kind of school, which wasn't a school, but is a place where we can just grow up, know how to be together, how to share, how to be a community, because that's what we've actually forgotten. Yeah.
Trude, we're going to hold you accountable for what you're saying. Create a new kind of place where we
I've
grow
always
up
wanted to do that.
and learn to be together. You have a team here witnessing your pledging.
I am actually doing it. That's my center, is what it's about. But it's not for me, because I can't reach them, because they're already caught up in a school system.
Trude, I'm wondering if there's a connection here, because earlier, you know, I'd spoken and then you said, that all sounds wonderful, you know, the stars and the imagination, but I get impelled, you know, I hear a voice and I say, no, you know, you feel that very strong voice. But I wonder if there is a connection here, that to be able to hear that voice, you have to be able to tune into that quiet voice. But what do we do with that quiet voice, and how do we respond? And they talk about the head, heart, and the gut, or I think in Sufism, it's the head, the heart, and the hands. It's the will, it's the courage to act in the world. And you know, if we're not being dictated to by the head, we're able to tune into our heart. But then what do we do with that? How do we manifest what needs to come through into the world? And then your voice about, I've got to do something. There's a social justice issue here. I need to act. There is something, because often as high sensory people, we can get caught in a sort of, you know, stuck going round and round in our heads, and, you know, the mental churn. And one of the things that has been most empowering for me is to not only take ownership of that those high sensory abilities, but also, once I've tuned into them, what do I do with that, and how do I act in the world to make sure that what needs to come through me does come through me into the world? So I do think there's a connection there between quiet imagination and then action.
Yeah, probably. It just doesn't seem so quiet to me. But really, I mean, I feel that the strong emotions make me act. So if I didn't have them, if I wasn't highly sensitive, then I wouldn't have noticed, really. I wouldn't have done anything, because it needs to be strong. I just wanted to mention one other thing, Karen, because you talked about nature. And I happen to be lucky enough to live in a city with lots of nature. I mean, we've got 7 mountains surrounding us. We've got water all over the place, you know, come from the sky also, but I live in a boat. I walk, and as I walk through town, because I walk, I don't drive, my legs just take me somewhere. I don't choose, my head doesn't choose, my legs just take me to all the prettiest places and always through the parks. And so I noticed sometimes I have to go to somewhere, you know, on a bridge with lots of cars, and I just feel I don't want to go there. And so my body's really, really telling me that. So yeah, I suppose you have to be quiet in some way to listen. I just probably don't have to be
Thank you,
quiet.
Trude. Thank you, Kemal. I love this conversation. I think we're gonna inviting us to another talk, and I don't want to go. I want to ask Melina to talk, but just it reminds me of as above, so below. You know, the stars, the imagination, but we need action. We need connection with being here in the physical body on Earth. That's absolutely a crucial topic, and I hope we could have an opportunity to discuss it another time. But before we wrap up, because we're running out of time, Melina, please let us hear your voice.
Thank you. I'll just keep it brief, but I think one thing that I do want to add, and I did resonate with everyone tonight, so thank you. But I really feel that intuition is something, it definitely isn't, it isn't a matter of the head. It is something that is way beyond any point of reference that we have. And in that way, it's quite an expansive thing. It's something that is, it opens up, as I said before, just a whole new way of being, because we're not basing it on things of the past. We're basing it on things that we actually don't even know about. So it's a knowing about things that we don't know. And yeah, I just feel that it is an amazing thing to be able to get those downloads and to be able to connect and you know, act from a place of complete and utter connection to the divine, to the universe. And yeah, what a privilege and an honor it is to have that connection.
The things that we don't know. That's a great way to conclude our conversation. Thank you so much for bringing all of you your wisdom and your experience and your journey. It's been great. I think we can just go on for hours. It's great. It's so rich what came up through this conversation, and I do hope we get a chance to continue on another time, another day. Thank you again, and we'll see each other soon, hopefully. Have a great day.